Picture this. A packed Airbus A330 thundering down the runway at Brisbane Airport. It's nearly midnight. In the cockpit, the first officer has his hand on the thrust levers. The aircraft accelerates through 50 knots, then 70, then 100. But where are the airspeed numbers? Every airspeed indicator on every display in the cockpit is showing a red flag. Not one valid reading anywhere. We're about to experience what happens when an Airbus full of passengers leaves the ground with no idea how fast it's flying. So stow your tray tables, fasten your seatbelts, and prepare for some extreme turbulence, because this is Final Boarding Call. Hello and welcome to Final Boarding Call. I'm your disaster-obsessed host, Alice.
And I'm the wife-obsessed husband, Zach.
That was smooth. Okay. We haven't done this in like 15 episodes, but a quick reminder to the listeners, please rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
We do this for us time, all right?
We so do.
At least that's what you tell yourself.
No, we really do it for us time. Otherwise, I'd invest in like social media and telling people about this podcast. It really just exists
Honestly, besides the friend group, I feel weird telling people like we have an aviation disaster podcast. Who am I going to tell? The people at the airport? Nobody wants that.
Oh my God, how funny would it be if we just had a sign that said, "Ask me about my
podcast."
Boy. Well, before we get into tonight's story, we need to give a shout out to Xandria. I really hope that's how you pronounce this name. It's beautiful. It's Xandria.
Okay.
Xandria recommended this episode. So thank you. You have excellent taste, and this one is a good one. So my sources, I have the Australian Transport Safety Bureau's final investigation report. It was released in March of 2022. Mentour pilot, great deep dive on this case. Reporting from Australian Aviation and Flight Safety Australia. If you want all of the sources, head to the show notes.
Or leave a comment and say we didn't have any sources. I don't know.
One of those is fine. To understand what happened on the night of July 18th, 2018, you need to understand two things. What a pitot probe is, and why Brisbane Airport has a very specific, very unusual insect problem. Does it get more Australia than that, just right off the bat? We're like bugs.
I already hate it. If it flies, it dies. That's something that I say frequently. And I really do say that frequently, everybody.
And I almost started tearing up from joy seeing a pod of spiders outside today.
Yeah, you did. You're a weirdo.
I'm so excited.
They still gave me the goosebumps, but I let them live.
Nope.
They're little cat-faced orb weavers.
Oh my gosh, cute. They're cute. Okay, tangent over. We're going to start with the probe. Every commercial aircraft measures its airspeed not with a wheel or a GPS signal, but with a device called a pitot tube. Pitot tube. Named after the 18th century French engineer Henri Pitot. It's a small hollow tube mounted on the outside of the fuselage, which, if this is your first time listening, that's like the body of the plane. And it's pointed directly into the oncoming airflow. As the aircraft moves forward, air rams into the tube and creates pressure. The faster the aircraft moves, the higher the pressure. Onboard computers translate that pressure reading into airspeed.
I feel like there's got to be a better way to do this, but that's okay.
Okay, and see, I thought this was the coolest system ever, and I was so impressed with it.
I'm not saying it's not cool, but it sounds like an easy failure.
It's reliable as long as nothing blocks the tube. You're putting a lot of pressure on that tube.
Yeah. Oh no, a leaf clogged it up.
But here's the good news. If there's one thing that we've learned on this podcast, it's that we love redundancy.
Oh, they have multiple tubes?
Drink. The Airbus A330 has 3 pitot tubes, 2 on the left side of the fuselage near the nose, 1 on the right. Why they couldn't just do 4 is beyond me, but I'm a fan of symmetry. Each feeds its own independent air data reference computer, and the 3 systems cross-check each other constantly. 3 independent systems because airspeed is not optional information. This is critical. You need it for every phase of flight, but especially for takeoff, where you need to know when you've hit V1, which is the decision speed that you're taken off. There's no aborting once you've hit V1.
I think landing would be, I think that's the first thing that pops into my head, is landing is going to be a little sketchy if you have no idea how fast you're going.
That is very true, Zach. And also, it's very important for VR, which is the rotation speed where you pull back and leave the ground. On the ground, when an aircraft is parked, these probes need to be protected, obviously, because things like rain, debris, and at Brisbane Airport specifically, nesting insects can block them.
Ugh.
So when an aircraft is parked for maintenance, engineers fit small covers over the probes to keep them clear. These covers are bright orange or red. They are attached to long streamers that hang visibly off the aircraft. And those streamers exist for one reason.
Look at me. You must see me and remove me.
That's exactly it, Zach. Now, let's talk about the wasp.
Ugh, is that what it was? The most pointless creature in the world?
The keyhole wasp, scientific name, why do I do this to myself? Scientific name, Pachydinerus nasidensis, is a small solitary wasp originally from Central and South America. However, a population established itself at Brisbane Airport, and they have made the airport's parked aircraft a particular target for their nests. The keyhole wasp is an opportunist. It looks for any small, dark, horizontal tube, approximately the right diameter, to deposit its eggs and provision them with paralyzed spiders or caterpillars.
I hate this whole thing.
I kind of love it. Like, this is weird. We're an aviation disaster podcast and we're talking about wasps. I think it's neat. A pitot probe is dimensionally almost perfect. So researchers studying the Brisbane population found that a keyhole wasp can completely block a pitot probe in as little as 20 minutes.
Jesus.
That's an efficient wasp. From empty to fully obstructed, the nests are made of soil, mud, insect prey, and they're dense enough to completely prevent airflow. Brisbane Airport knew about this. Studies going back years had documented the hazard. The airport had begun fitting pitot covers on all aircraft during ground stops as a standard precaution.
Like, you're only going to be here for 15 minutes to fuel
They're
up.
like, cover that hole. Cover that hole. But here is where the first gap opened. That information and why behind the covers was known at the airport authority level and at Malaysia Airlines engineering management level. It was not routinely communicated to the line engineers doing the work.
Why do managers always leave The workers out to dry.
Communication is such a skill. It's such a skill, and many people do not have it. So they didn't tell the engineers, they didn't tell the flight crews, or the ground handling companies managing the turnarounds. The people putting the covers on and taking them off often didn't know that they were protecting against a very specific biological threat that only existed at this specific airport.
Yeah.
They were following a procedure without understanding the consequences of getting it wrong. And you got to think about that mentally. If you are an engineer or a maintenance worker and you've got a bunch of things to do, and it's a beautiful, clear day, when you're under a time crunch, the first thing on your mind is not going to be like, oh, I need to cover the
These many
pitot
tubes.
things. Yes. No. But you don't know that the real threat is actually a wasp.
Well, if you don't know, now you know.
I'm not finishing that one. That gap between institutional knowledge and operational practice is going to matter enormously in a few minutes. Malaysia Airlines flight MH134 was operating the Kuala Lumpur Brisbane route. Nailed it. Which the airline had only just resumed in late 2018 after a 3-year hiatus. The aircraft was an Airbus A330-300, registration 9M-MTK, and I didn't write out the fancy talk for that, with 215 passengers and 14 crew on board. In the cockpit, our captain is a 59-year-old with 14,411 total flight hours.
Get it, guy?
Though only 555 of those were on the A330 because he had recently converted from Boeing. He was a 737 and 747 guy.
Yeah, I'm not sure I've actually been on an A330. We've done plenty of A320s.
So he was pilot monitoring for this leg, meaning his job was to handle communications, checklists, and systems management while the first officer is going to be flying the plane. The first officer had 6,500 total hours, technically 6,544, with 4,583 of them on the A330. So on this aircraft, he has way more experience than the captain. It is a late Sunday night, and nobody on board has any reason to expect anything other than a long, quiet flight to Kuala Lumpur. The ground operations at Brisbane were handled by a web of overlapping organizations. Malaysia Airlines itself, its contracted engineering support through a company called AMSA, and a ground handler called Menzies Aviation, which was responsible for dispatch. Before the passengers boarded, an AMSA support engineer fitted 3 pitot covers over the aircraft's probes. Then he walked over to the Malaysia Airlines traveling engineer, a licensed aircraft engineer, or LAE, to tell him the covers are on. Cool. The LAE, by his own account, was in the middle of something. He acknowledged the message in some way. The AMSA engineer, reasonably confident that the message had been received, moved on to his next job. The LAE later said he had no memory of this exchange. The LAE was an experienced certifying engineer, the person whose signature on the technical log declares an aircraft airworthy. He was also, by this point in his career, functioning simultaneously as a regional manager. Not assistant to. He was the full-blown regional manager. A dual role that the ATSB later found had made his workload considerably more demanding. He conducted his own walk-around, his inspection of the aircraft's exterior. I mean, he literally walked around. He saw the pitot covers, he registered them visually, and then in the subsequent rush of pre-departure paperwork, certification tasks, and coordination work, he forgot.
Oh, to remove them? That's not where I thought this was going. I thought this was going to be a bee got in there and destroyed everything, but now this is worse.
This is not carelessness in the conventional sense. It's a documented cognitive phenomenon, perspective memory failure, where you see something, you mentally tag it as a task to complete later, and then the task completely drops out of your working memory when competing demands crowd it out. This happens to me so often at work.
Yeah, that's just my daily life. And usually it's looking at wheels like, I need to go torque those. And then I do something else. Oh, I need to go torque those. And then as I'm pulling out, dang it, I still didn't torque those. Now I got to do it now. Or I already did, and then I do it 3 times. That's also my brain.
You know what happens to me? We use Microsoft systems at my work. So we have Microsoft Teams and Outlook. And so often I'll receive a message on like one of them, Teams, for example. And then when it's opened, the message shows as read.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll remember at some point, like, oh, I needed to respond to that, or there was an action item associated with that. And I will have completely forgotten where it existed, who it came from. I just know in the back of my mind, like, oh no, I didn't do a thing. It happens to experienced, capable, and very conscientious people, if that makes us feel any better.
Especially when they are overloaded with things to do.
So true. The captain conducted his own exterior walk-around. It took 1 minute and 32 seconds. 1 minute and 32 seconds, my God, like that's how long it takes to just acknowledge there's an airplane there. What are you checking in that time?
Yeah, I don't think that you walked front to back in that.
The ATSB found he did not inspect the right side of the aircraft's nose, where one of the 3 pitot probes was located. The covers on the left side probes had orange streamers, but those from the AMSA kit were 30 centimeters, about 12 inches long, shorter than the Airbus approved streamers that should have been 20 inches, almost twice that length.
Just to grab attention a little more.
Mm-hmm. And remember, Zach, it's almost midnight.
Yeah, it's dark. You can't really see anything.
In the dark, at a distance, they were so easy to miss. And the right side probe wasn't even inspected at all. So that guy could have been streaming all day and nobody looked at him. Pre-departure checklist includes an item related to the probes. The item reads approximately, probe heat on. The intended check is that probe heating is activated. It doesn't explicitly ask, hey,
are these
the
covers?
The assumption baked into the checklist is that the covers are gone before you even reach this step. So it's not even on the checklist.
They're going to have to stop with those assumptions. Bet they did after this.
Mm-hmm. The crew completed this item normally, and the covers stayed on. The final layer was dispatch. The Menzies leading hand, who normally conducted the pre-departure walk-around, handed the dispatch roll off to a coordinator at the last minute, without confirming whether a walk-around had been completed. The coordinator, assuming it had, confirmed to the flight crew that all external checks were complete. This was supposed to be our 3rd walk-around of the airplane, but it didn't even happen.
Everybody's dropping the ball in some way, thinking there's multiple of these. Somebody will catch it.
Yeah. 5 separate walk-arounds should have caught those covers. The Menzies arrival walk-around, which was not conducted. The AMSA support engineer's handover, acknowledged by a man who immediately forgot it. The LAE's engineering walk-around, completed, covers seen, mentally filed, and then lost. The captain's flight crew walk around, which was incomplete and done in like a minute and change. And then the Menzies dispatch walk around, which wasn't even conducted.
It's a lot of failure points.
5. 3 covers are still on this aircraft. When flight MH134 began its takeoff roll on runway 19, also known as 19er. It's just before midnight in Brisbane. The A330 rolls onto the runway, and the first officer advances the thrust levers toward takeoff power. 215 passengers settle back into their seats. I mean, most of them have done the mental math for a long overnight flight and are already falling asleep. At 50 knots, roughly 58 miles per hour, a system alert triggers in the cockpit. When ground speed exceeds 50 knots, but the airspeed reading is below 30, the flight management system knows something's wrong. Red flags appear on all 3 primary flight displays. Every airspeed indicator on every screen in the cockpit is invalid simultaneously. The captain sees them and he calls out, "Speed, speed," because he thinks they aren't going fast enough.
Oh.
The first officer hears it, and for a fraction of a second, he doesn't know what it means. Is the captain calling out the speed, flagging a problem, calling for a rejected takeoff? No one has ever specifically trained for an all airspeed invalid during takeoff roll scenario in the A330. That was not covered in training. It isn't in the memory items. It isn't covered in type rating training. His response is audible on the cockpit voice recorder. Then abort? Both? No? That's what he says. Which sounds like me at midnight when I'm confused.
So you want me to do what?
The captain does not call for a rejected takeoff, though. The aircraft is accelerating through approximately 100 knots, 115 miles per hour. The runway behind them is shortening. And in the absence of a clear command, the first officer thrusts on.
I'm like, yeah, continue. It's fine.
On the right side of the nose, one of the pitot cover streamers, the short ones, the not approved ones, is now streaming backward in the airflow. The
like
captain,
a dancer. It's beautiful.
The captain spots it through the side window. And he calls it out. But at this point,
you're going too fast.
The aircraft is past V1. Stopping is no longer a safe option. The first officer rotates at the calculated rotation speed of 160 knots, roughly 184 miles per hour, a number that he's flying to from memory because there's no numbers showing up in that cockpit. The A330 lifts off from the runway and climbs into the Brisbane night. You want to talk about feeling it as, somebody who's piloting a machine? That's feeling it.
Well, and honestly, as they talk about it, going from speed memory and everything, I don't think that is, I'm sure it's frowned upon, but I don't think it would be that hard. I very rarely have to look down at my speedometer while I'm driving, and I know roughly how fast I'm going.
Even when there's no traffic around you?
Yep.
Even when you're driving an automatic car?
Especially when I'm driving an automatic car.
Okay. I think it's way easier in a manual because then I can hear and I know what gear I'm in. So I kind of have a range of...
They are working with a much larger variance of speed. But yeah, I bet up to 85, I could be within a mile an hour or two.
You're a confident man.
I am.
And I love that. And it always works out for you except for when it doesn't.
But 60% of the time it works every time.
We haven't done a Name That Movie in a long time,
Oh,
but you just gave a great movie quote, so I'm going to challenge our listeners to name the movie. At liftoff, the aircraft enters what Airbus calls alternate law. Normally, an A330's flight control computers operate in normal law, providing automatic protections against excessive bank angle, against flying too fast or too slow. In alternate law, which kind of sounds like the Matrix, those protections are partially removed. The pilots have more direct control of the aircraft and they have more responsibilities.
that means they'll never have fun again.
Never. Name the show. The first officer sets a pitch of approximately 10 degrees and holds toga, which is take off and go around thrust. When you don't know how fast you're going, you set a known pitch angle and a known thrust setting, and you use that combination to maintain a safe flight profile. It's not elegant, but
It works.
it works. The aircraft climbs away from Brisbane carrying 229 people and a crew who now need to figure out what just happened and what to do next. Above 1,500 feet, 460 meters, the ECAM, which is the Electronic Centralized Aircraft Monitor, comes alive with warnings.
Like, hey guys, just so you know, we don't know how fast you're going.
The hills are alive with warnings.
ABS sensor gone bad.
All three air data references are flagging faults. Every airspeed source is invalid. The crew levels off at approximately 11,000 feet, roughly 3,350 meters, just to buy some time. They work through the quick reference handbook procedure for unreliable airspeed methodically. One air data reference briefly shows what looks like a valid reading. They cycle through the troubleshooting steps. The reading disappears. All three probes are blocked.
Yeah, they're useless
they're
right now.
The crew declares a pan.
What on earth? I want to know.
It's the international urgency call, one step below Mayday.
Oh, it's like
So
the plane's
Mayday-
working,
yeah,
we're flying,
yes.
but we've got
Yes.
something serious.
That's exactly what it means. We have a serious problem and need assistance, but we are not in immediate danger of crashing. Pan.
I don't know why that's the name that they came up with,
I
but
love
I accept
it.
them.
I actually love it. The first attempt on tower frequency isn't heard. The crew switches to departures frequency and calls again. Brisbane approach clears the airspace and begins coordinating the return. In the cabin, 215 passengers who had been drifting toward sleep are now in what feels like an unusual prolonged non-climb. The aircraft is circling. The captain makes a calm announcement. Technical issues with the airspeed and navigation systems, returning to Brisbane as a precaution. He does not use the word emergency because he's smart.
Yeah, why let everybody panic?
No panic needed. It's a tam-tam. Is that what we called it?
Pan. Wow.
It's a pan.
Did you say pan or Pam?
The cabin crew maintains the composed professionalism of people who have trained for exactly this kind of ambiguity. Now, we have to fix it. The A330 can be equipped with a system called BUS, Backup Speed Scale. So it's BUS with two S's. It's an optional fitment on older A330 models, and of course, it's not required by regulations. And when it was introduced in 2006, it cost approximately 300,000 euros per aircraft, or $330,000. $100,000 US dollars.
If you want some redundancy, you gotta pay this much.
Well, that's a lot of money, and not every operator had paid for it. But I don't think we've ever told a story where this has happened, but Malaysia Airlines had paid for this random optional thing to be installed on their aircraft.
That they hoped to never use.
So I want to take a moment and just give a massive shout out to Malaysia Airlines for this particular thing, because
You go, girl.
Get it. Bus works by completely bypassing the pitot system.
All right.
When you switch off all three air data references simultaneously, Bus activates and uses angle of attack sensors on the fuselage, separate from the pitot probes, to calculate a safe flight envelope and display it as a color-coded scale.
Beautiful.
Green means safe. The pilots do not get a precise airspeed number with this, but they get a zone. Fly here in this zone.
Ish.
The crew switches off all three air data references, the aircraft holding at around 11,000 feet. And Bus activates. For the first time since before rotation, the pilots have a meaningful reference for how the aircraft is flying. One more complication. The aircraft is very heavy.
Mm-hmm.
This was going to be a
rough landing.
Yeah, it was going to be a rough landing because this was supposed to be a long flight.
Yeah, so they've got crazy amounts of fuel, and they're like, do we just burn all of it off and fly around in circles, or do we come down?
Wait until you hear how long or how heavy this thing is. The A330 is certified for a maximum landing weight of 412,000 pounds. Coming back with nearly a full fuel load, they're sitting at 466,000 pounds.
That's heavy.
Nearly 54,000 pounds over the limit. This is not a structural emergency, but it's enough to stress the landing gear way beyond its normal design envelope.
Blow them shocks out.
Oof. The crew briefs a firm, positive touchdown. Don't float, get it on the ground, and stop it. The approach is flown on Bus, with Brisbane Approach providing guidance throughout. At around 12:33, flight MH134 touches down on runway 1 at approximately 152 knots ground speed, which is 175 miles per hour. The aircraft rolls out and stops approximately a mile short of the runway end. It did good.
Yeah, not bad.
Down the runway, the entire emergency fleet of Brisbane Airport is waiting. Fire trucks, ambulances, emergency vehicles, lights strobing red and blue, and all those passengers are like,
what the hell?
I thought this was like not a big deal.
And then the pilot could say, it wasn't. Did you die?
Did you die? It is only now, looking out the windows at a convoy of fire trucks chasing the aircraft down the tarmac, that the passengers begin to understand that this had not been a completely routine diversion. The landing had felt very firm, much harder than normal. The aircraft sits on the runway rather than taxiing to a gate, and the lights of Brisbane's emergency services are everywhere. The aircraft actually has to be towed from the runway. The overweight landing has caused minor abrasion to the main landing gear doors, and the probe cover streamers have left faint marks along the fuselage skin where they burned and dragged during the flight.
It's kind of like when we towed your car down to the, I don't remember what track, but I had the leftover ratchet strap sitting in the cab of the car and closed in the door, and it was flopping around and it ruined all the stickers.
I recall that. walking his post-landing inspection, the LAE finds all 3 pitot covers are still on the aircraft.
And he just shook his head.
He's like, that is not going to be good news for me.
Damn it.
The ATSB investigation took nearly 4 years.
Why?
I think because there were so many
lapses.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you got to dive into like, how did 5 oopsies, very obvious oopsies, cause this incident?
Yeah. You got to make sure that those don't happen again.
The final report, released in March 2022, was not particularly interested in finding a villain. What it found instead was a system that had been silently accumulating failure conditions long before the night of July 18th.
Yeah.
So start with the covers themselves. The ones that were used that night
were wrong.
They were wrong. They were not the Airbus approved covers that Malaysia Airlines had actually sent to Brisbane for this purpose. Those were sitting unused.
They actually never were on an aircraft. They were just using what they wanted.
The AMSA engineer had fitted his company's own covers, the ones with the much shorter, less visible streamers, instead of the approved ones. And a small difference in length made a massive difference in visibility, especially in the nighttime. So the fact that these non-approved covers had become kind of a standard practice, that was called out
well,
in the
just
report.
Keep in mind, there's one true villain here, and it's the wasps. If they didn't exist, they wouldn't have to do this. If they didn't have to do this, everything would have been fine.
The investigators focused on a finding that goes deeper than the covers. None of the 5 walkarounds that should have caught them had been done correctly. And in most cases, the underlying procedures had been degraded for so long that nobody involved knew that they were non-compliant. The Menzies pre-departure walkaround had not been completed on any of the 4 Malaysia Airlines turnarounds examined in the month leading up to this incident.
Well,
not one of them. I know, it's like,
okay,
that does not look good in the report. The engineering pre-departure walkaround, a separate Malaysia Airlines requirement, had similarly not been completed on any of those turnarounds. So these are not isolated failures on one bad night.
They've been crushing it for a while.
Sick. The ATSB also examined Malaysia Airlines' risk management processes and found out that when the airline restarted the Brisbane route in June 2018, it didn't conduct a formal risk assessment of the keyhole wasp hazard. How do you like it that the wasps made it into this report? I want to know if there's any other accident report with the word wasp in it.
The pilot was wasping something away.
Okay, well, that's not what I was talking about. The institutional knowledge existed. The assessment that might have translated it into operational practice did not happen. And on the individual consequences, the ATSB's function under international aviation law is to understand systemic failure, not assign personal blame. Civil Aviation Safety Authority, also known as CASA, reviewed the findings separately. There is no public record of any pilots or engineers' licenses being permanently revoked. The flight crew underwent retraining. Malaysia Airlines implemented a mandatory placard system, a physical warning card placed over the thrust levers anytime pitot covers are fitted to an aircraft. And I have to do the same thing when I do an oil change on my car because I've
seen your stickers and pieces of tape and paper, whatever. No oil, do not start.
Yes, I get so paranoid that I'm going to be like, great, oil change done. Crank that thing and just disaster. So I have to make it impossible to miss. And that's what they had to do with these because of the pitot covers. The captain returned to flying. The airline publicly defended him throughout.
I do love the company loyalty. You don't get
Mhm.
it very often.
You don't. You really don't. The LAE faced the most scrutiny. The ATSB documented his dual role as both a certifying engineer and regional manager as a contributing factor, finding that this workload is not sustainable. Heston MRO, the company formerly known as AMSA, overhauled its fatigue management system, and it ended the practice of allowing personnel in combined management and engineering roles.
You can't wear two hats.
No. Not when you're responsible for hundreds of lives, you can't. Menzies Aviation retrained its ground crew specifically on pitot cover visibility, and it formalized its dispatch handover process. Any mid-turnaround transfer or dispatch responsibilities now requires explicit confirmation that walk-around status has been communicated and understood. No more of this like, hey, did you get that? And the guy's like, uh-huh. No. The investigation also turned its attention to Airbus and the aircraft itself. The ATSB noted that the A330's flight warning computers had previously suppressed certain airspeed cautions during the takeoff roll on the logic that the high workload takeoff phase didn't need additional nuance warnings.
Oh.
MH134 exposed the flaw in that logic. When all airspeed sensors fail simultaneously during the roll, suppression was hiding the emergency at exactly the moment when it needed to be heard. So they interpreted it as we're not going fast enough instead of holy cannonballs, we got to shut this thing down right now.
Yeah.
And by the time they realized the issue, they were already off the ground.
Yeah.
Pilot training changed alongside it. The 100-knot cross-check confirming airspeed is alive and sensible as the aircraft accelerates is now a non-negotiable go, no-go gate in A330 training. If airspeed isn't normal at 100 knots, it's an immediate rejected takeoff, no exceptions.
Smart.
And then there is BUS, the system that saved the day. The newer A330 Neos, which we have flown on, integrates a more advanced version called synthetic airspeed, which uses angle of attack and engine data to calculate a virtual airspeed automatically.
They figured it out.
That's it. Standard equipment from the factory. Boom, baby. You get it. You get it, and you get it.
There's nobody else here.
Okay. Malaysia Airlines did not suspend Brisbane operations while the investigation ran. They implemented their procedural fixes, and they kept flying. The route was eventually paused, but not because of the 2018 incident. COVID-19 actually shut it down.
Wow.
When Malaysia Airlines cut Brisbane from its network in March 2023, it was route rationalization and high fuel costs. There you go. And then, in November 2025, back streets back.
All right.
They brought it back. And as of today, Malaysia Airlines is the only carrier operating nonstop flights between Brisbane and Kuala Lumpur 5 times a week on the Airbus A330. And Zach, that is our story for today.
It was definitely a little bit shorter, but I love that there were no major issues, no major reprimands. Just, hey, we had this thing pop up and now we're going to learn from it. That's a great time for that to happen.
Yeah, all because of the wasps.
Damn the wasps.
Wasps.
They all deserve to die. It's
Okay.
fine.
Well, if you enjoyed this episode, please rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. You can also follow us on social media, but we're not really there. Go ahead and shoot us an email, finalboardingcallpodcast@gmail.com. You can find merch on our store. And please join us next time when we will be exploring another transportation disaster story. Until then, remember to stow your tray tables, fasten your seatbelts, and prepare for the unexpected, because not every trip reaches its final destination.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.